Hey guys, Stealth here. In this conquest map we're following Easy E on Gunboat Diplomacy. Now I don't know about you guys, but for me diplomacy on this map has never worked really well. Diplomacy, as far as I'm concerned, comes out of the barrel of a gun in this map. And more specifically, mostly the barrel of an infantry gun. since you have these blocks here in the middle, and these building blocks, and on the other side of the river some more, it's always going to be quite a heavy infantry fight. Now, since it is conquest, their objective is to capture as many zones as quickly as possible to get that income up and make sure that they're getting enough points. Conquest games usually have quite the high income to make sure that you can deploy a lot of units, and losing units is not as painful as normally it would be in destruction. I'm not saying you're getting more units, but since the units themselves, the kill-death ratio doesn't really matter that much, you sometimes see players making much more aggressive moves than they would ever consider to do in Total Destruction. So, Easy E mentioned that he's going to open up with a quick helicopter force on the left flank, and he's trying to get a foothold. And you can see that doing, or you can see him doing this here on this flank. He'll go here with a quick helicopter force. Now, this is not an easy maneuver to do, especially since Red 4, and you can see that there's a quite large counter push from the helicopters from Red 4. Red 4 has a quite easy way of getting here, and really the only way that Blue 4 can get into this area easily is by using helicopters or very fast transports, but they only can use ground transports if they have at least some of these buildings under their control. Otherwise you're just going to get shot down by ATGMs, infantry in either of these blocks. You might encounter a helicopter or two, or you're going to encounter some tanks firing at you from greater distances. Now he did manage to capture or to land his forces, but it seems that these riflemen, the light riflemen here, got crushed by a helicopter that came down right on top of them. You can see this Chinook here upside down. He's pushing in, but I doubt that with one group of light riflemen and one group of deltas he's going to have a lot of success there. And it seems that another helo went down here. This was the Black Hawk that was transporting the light riflemen. And yeah, with Strelas and Mi-24Vs it is difficult to get in here. Let's see the rest of the map. Based on what I'm seeing here, I'm guessing that Jurstrike went with a French deck. I'm only seeing French vehicles here, nothing Eurocore. We got Cross Brutzel over here with an automatic, and over on the left flank, or on the right flank that is, Javelins, Gurkhas, Milan 2s. This is a British deck by the looks of it. Surprising though that they haven't captured the terrain yet, and you can see that Red 4 is getting a +1 advantage. Also Blue 4 seems to have invested more points into actually getting more infantry into this town, which is a consideration you can make here. So instead of getting more CVs, they decided to go for the infantry or the assaulting forces first, and then to bring in the command vehicles. Now they should at least put them at a neutral stance with their points, possibly a +1. Let's see. This is interesting, by the way. They haven't captured Juliet, so the red team might not be that well coordinated. And this means that as soon as they actually park this CV, yeah, there you go. Now they're at a +3 because they captured both Golf and Charlie. Let's hope they can keep that up for a while. You can see they also have a CV in here, but there's a very good chance that Red 4 has already parked a infantry CV either there, so an infantry command, or there. But this is my estimate. Yep, there it is. It's not an infantry, it's just a BRDM-2U. And Easy E correctly estimates where that CV is. He says CV somewhere here. Well, it's almost dead on top of it, so very good estimate there. Now, what I saw in the description of this replay is that it's going to be a very tight game. The teams are going to be pretty damn equal in skill level and capacity, and that means that these games are usually the most interesting to watch. I mean, it's nice if you can do one of those mad dashes like I did a couple of weeks back with the Scandinavian mechanized deck, but sometimes it just feels like you're not running into enough resistance, like you're not being challenged enough. If you have opponents who are equally skilled to you, then you're going to have a much more interesting gameplay, because you're going to be facing more challenges, or challenges that you haven't faced before. Strike apparently is using Eurocorps, but he is using a couple of Panzer Grenadier 90s here. Hopefully they got rid of all the VDVs here. And there's another vehicle coming in, T-72B1. Pretty decent tank, 15 points of frontal armor, but not enough to stand up against a couple of ATGMs from an ATGM line F3 and another F3 group and another F3 over here. So he's really got this area locked down. And this, by the way, is one of the best positions for ATGM infantry, because from here they can see to their bridge. If you put them, for example, in here, they can see anything that comes out of this little bit of cover from the bridge. So they don't actually see the bridge, they see this crossroads, which is still well enough, but this position is a bit better, although it is more risky. Now let's see. Red 4 has not yet made any real attempts to push out Easy E from this section. This is an interesting offensive though. This is Cross-Brutzel. He's engaging with 2 automatics, and he's not using these in the AA capacity but in the anti-ground capacity. So instead of going for helicopters, he's actually just sniping transports and possibly the infantry that's going to come out of it. Hopefully he's going to micromanage these, because otherwise you're going to see 1 or 2 seed planes and they're just going to eradicate those automatics. Still a lot of infantry here. We've got a couple of Moskras in here. I'm thinking we're going to see reservists. Yep. Quite unexpected really, but reservists, while I prefer not to use them, these guys do come with the MG3. It's not the LMG3, so it's not a CQC weapon. This thing has to be stationary, but for a 10-point infantry unit they can still deploy quite a bit of fire. Now Easy E is being a bit too aggressive here with his Delta Force. You're never going to have 5 Delta Force square off against 15 VDVs. It's just not going to fly. What will work is using grenade launchers. That is, if you can stay outside the range of their weaponry. And these are base VDV, they're not that dangerous. VDV 90s that you saw in here are much, much more so. And it seems that Red 4 has now captured all of their zones and they are no longer getting an income. So if they can throw out the infantry or the command vehicle that's been hiding out here, that would really help them out. Because then they're going to be at another +1. It's not the best income, but it is getting you towards where you want to go slowly. Problem is that Red 4 has managed to capture Hotel, and Blue 4 is not challenging that capture, so they're now again at a +1 for Red 4. US Marines facing off against a lot of infantry, a couple of transports around. Good thing though that these transports are actually getting away. That's because this one is the CV, but this one has a main gun. Yeah, now it's finally engaging those Marines. I was going to say, why are you not using the BTRD against the Marines? Now it's really needed that he's going to bring in some more infantry here, because otherwise this is going to be over very quickly for the Marines and whatever other infantry is in here, because the reservists and the light riflemen are not going to stand up against this flood of VDVs for very long. Dragon comes in, and very well timed to get the hell out of there by the Marines. They managed to at least delete 1 squad of VDVs there. Hopefully some more. And these guys are definitely panicked, and this one's shaken. So these should be pretty easy to be dealt with. Although 1 panicked US Marine. Yeah, I was afraid that was going to happen. He's bringing in some more units. And he has a Paladin, which is engaging... Not too sure what it's engaging, actually. A couple of PT-90s coming in. These are nice support units, and especially in a town like this, having a couple of these very cheap 25-point vehicles is a nice asset, because they're going to be doing, well, if you can kill off a transport or 2, you already got scored 25 points. What I do prefer though is not the PT-90 but the BMP 685, because it has a better gun on it. This one has an accuracy of 25%. I prefer the 50% gun on the BTR or the 685, the BMP. A couple of Centurions taking a lot of fire from these Mi-24Ps. And he is flying around with a Block 52, but I'm not sure what he's trying to engage, because I didn't see any aircraft for one. A couple more Delta Force are moving up. In a situation like this, it's always very hard where you can deploy the infantry. Sometimes you're managing to deploy the infantry right there, almost next to where you need them to go. Sometimes you have to offload all the way out here, although I think that out here is a bit too far away. Now, time for some automatic action. Let's hope that they can destroy these guys fast enough. No, PT-90 got the kill. It's a very sad thing for a great automatic like that. But you can see that two of these 25-point units are cheaper than one automatic. So quite cost effective in only killing off one 80-point unit. Now why Easy E's moving up with a couple of light riflemen here, I have no idea why. Even if it is conquest, I try not to throw forces away like this, and he's just, I don't know, throwing them at those VDVs. VDVs are panicked, but these guys are panicked now as well, so they're never going to survive. I have no idea what he was trying to do here. But if he was just trying to push up with a couple of panicked riflemen, then that's definitely not the right way to do it. Now, as expected, not a lot going on over here, so Arenoli is probably also providing forces in the middle. Let's see where he's operating. Got Jur Strike. No, nothing yet, actually. A couple of aircraft are coming in, and you can see that Blue Fort does not have a lot of anti-air set up over here. It is difficult to get anti-air over here. Although, getting a Mistral to move towards here is pretty easy to do, because these things are very mobile. And, wow. For some reason these MiGs decided not to drop. And they are looking for targets in the sense of vehicles, because these things carry anti-ground missiles. But, I'm not sure why you'd send those out here, because there's no vehicles, except for a couple of Unimogs. Now again, Delta Force here. Engaging heavily with Spetsnaz GRU and a couple of Jalos. I don't think that the Deltas are going to survive. What I would recommend Easy E to do here next time is bring in a bigger amount of forces or not to go here at all. Because he is barely holding, and this is just turning into one big meat grinder. Ooh, they got a target here. Yeah, they managed to shoot down a helicopter. It's just turning into a big meat grinder here, and that means that the infantry is just going to keep dying until you bring in some high-end infantry in significant numbers that's going to actually take out the enemy. Now, let's see, we got a couple of Veseleks here, getting ready to fire, being resupplied. So there's definitely a logistics vehicle near. And Blue Force seems to be making very, very slight progress into Hotel here. But for Blue 4, it's pretty damn difficult to get a CV into a position somewhere in this sector. Because this position over here is, for now, the only one that I would consider putting down a command on. You do get a little bit of cover, and it is really a little bit. It's just a small tree line or a hedge line. Getting infantry in here, command infantry, is going to be damn near impossible with the Spetsnaz and God knows what other kind of infantry in here. Command infantry in here, same problem, and getting commands in here is just a no-go. Not with all of these guys surrounding that position. So Red 4 has the advantage here, and Blue 4 has now forced their way into this position, managing to throw out the Red 4 command, but you can see that they're still pretty tight. M101 HC comes in, heavy tank, nice amount of armor and gun. Main armament of 22 armor penetration. Backed up by a couple of Leo 2A4s, some automatics again. Again, these automatics are active, so if someone would fly over a seaplane, these things would either one of them or both of them be dead. So they gotta be careful with that. I'm not sure where the hell this Abrams is going, but it's just volunteering to get shot in the side. Very, very lucky that that ATGM group got taken out, otherwise this Abrams would have probably died to that ATGM. Puts down an attack marker here on the AA missiles, the Bucks. Nice if you can get a couple of kills on those, because they're worth 70 points, and I know that you're not really playing for points in destruction, but in a deck you usually don't get that many Bucks anyway, so the more you can take down, the safer your planes are to operate in that area. I have just no idea why this Easy E has Abrams back here. You can see that the Leopard 2A4s are actually engaging the enemy here. And the automatics are probably going to move up along with the Gepards, trying to get a couple of kills on these helicopters. Yep, there you go. But this M21HC should be on the front line. That's what you get these things for. Anyway, more Marines are coming in. Backed up by LVTB-7A1s with their grenade launchers. Only one of them survived though, the other one is burning wreck here. And another one got taken down by an ATGM. Let's see if they can push up fast enough. If they could capture these buildings, that would be another step forward. What I would try to do here is just put a large smoke screen around this position, so that the enemy T-80, T-72 tanks cannot really be a threat to your infantry. And especially Marines with their AT-4 have a decent chance of actually taking out a lot of transports and infantry, and possibly even those tanks if they can get close enough. So I think that they should be a little bit more aggressive, but under the cover of smoke. And he does have a Paladin that can smoke out the position, he's just not using it in that capacity yet. Another MiG-27 comes in, he's probably going to snipe one of those Leopards. Yep, there goes a Leopard 2A4. Not really a lot they could have done against that. Maybe fly an ASF overhead to prevent that. But the ASF would probably take... Yeah, there you go. A lot of fire from the Bucks. A couple of Faster 4s here. Fezelax. Is this another... Yep, that's also a Buck. So there's just too much AA here, and there's another group of radar-guided AA. It's just too much AA here. And the other Leopard 2A4 also died here. Now he's moving up with the Abrams. Again, this is too late really, because he could have not really prevented the death of those Leopards, but he could at least have done a little bit more damage to the T-80 before it managed to kill off, or help kill off, those 2A4s. Very, very dangerous maneuvering here by Cross Brutzel, and he's paying for it dearly with another loss of an automatic. Gepards are engaging the Gornestrelki, but I doubt that they're going to get those. Abrams engaging, firing off a T-72, but not really getting the shot in, unfortunately. And just the amount of Marines that they're chewing through here is extremely high. Again, smoke screens could have made this a little bit less painful. Another automatic goes down, and the AA that... the automatic managed to retreat. The Flak Panzer Gepard A2 unfortunately died here. And you can see that the Bucks are probably empty. They have two groups, one group of one and one group of two. So they got 3 Bucks, and that's going to chew up supplies very, very quickly. So these cargoes are probably emptying their magazines onto the Bucks as we speak. And hopefully, if you can ignite these cargoes, you're going to see at least this Buck exploding and these two probably being panicked. So we already got artillery coming in, or we did. Yeah, we got artillery shells on the way. Let's see. Not really a good hit there. In the meanwhile, though, they have put down some smoke screens, but too little too late here, really. Because one US Marine against 18 VDVs is just done. More Delta Force here. You can see that Red 4 is not using high-end tanks, but they don't really need to in a situation like this. The engagement ranges are only interesting on this open terrain, but in a situation like this, very, very urbanized area, it's difficult to use the maximum range of those Abrams to their full potential. For these tanks, it's better to keep them at that range. Anything closer is going to make that frontal armor of theirs, that 20 armor, not as significant. And it's going to not take away from the armor penetration, but if you have this high armor penetration of 22, you don't need to get close to targets. So just stay at range. Make sure that those T-72s with their 14 armor penetration cannot go through the front of your Abrams unless they get very close. And by doing that, you have a pretty decent chance of keeping this thing alive. Another 2A4 here. And EZE is also gearing up for another offensive with M1A1s and M3A2s. And there was another one which was already brought in. Let's see. M1A1HC again. They have a CS hovering over here. It's probably got rearmed and repaired. But what I always do out of habit is once I have a helicopter, let's say you have this Super Chinook, which is out of supplies, you just send it back to the FOB, hold shift, and send it back to the front line. So it's going to keep moving back and forth. And you can do that with any unit that you want resupplied. Like for example the OH-58 CS. This way you have a constant supply of fresh, rearmed, reloaded troops on the front line. Now, for some reason Omnicide 81-82 surrendered. Not really sure why, because Red 4 isn't doing that bad. They have a pretty solid hold over Hotel. They're not letting Blue 4 anywhere near this bridge. And while Blue 4 is trying to make a little bit of headway here, they're not actually getting there. Now, a bit of a slugfest here with the T-72s and the Abrams and the Leopard 2A4. I gotta say, he's lucky, Crossbrutzel, that those Hawks don't get taken out. Based on what I'm seeing here, I'm thinking that either Crossbrutzel was too busy managing other tanks, other units, or he just didn't really see the threat to the EOTS Hawks, or is just a newer player. And considering he's also using GMC 450s, makes me think he's a new player, because these things, I have never used these, maybe once in a zombie game, but these quad M2 Brownings, I just don't find them effective. And look at that, they travel all the way to the front line and then they die to one RPG from the VDVs. The amount of fire that they can put down is not that great either. They got a decent suppression of 90. It's because they carry 4 of those machine guns. But no, no. I don't see this thing being useful. And there's another group of them. I gotta say, they did manage to hose down those VDVs in combination with the Deltas. But they are very, very situational units. There's only a couple situations, and this is one of them, I gotta admit that, where they could do well. Big help marker being put down by Jurstrike. They probably lost quite a bit of infantry here. That means that they got a big gap here in the middle of their lines, but I don't think that Red 4 is going to be exploiting that too much. BTR 90s coming in. BTR 90s is usually trouble. Not because these vehicles themselves are so good, but you can see that they got a complete veterancy. They got elite. And that means that it's probably packed with Spetsnaz. Spetsnaz who are going to make very, very short work of the Sapeurs and the BGS that Jurstrike has over here. Now over on the left flank, the reinforcements have arrived. We've got the M1A1s joining the fight here. We've got an Apache, M3A2. They got quite a bit of targets out here, but it's not really any good for an airstrike. Now with the faster 4AA unit out there. And Delta Force seems to be going back here to the Super Chinook to be resupplied. Not a moment too soon, really. There's not really a lot of Deltas left here. Yep, as expected. Those BTR 90s carried Spetsnaz, and the Spetsnaz are now chewing out the Sapeurs. And they even got a T-90S that they smuggled in here somehow as backup. Probably because the BGS only have, or sorry, they do have very good optics. I thought they weren't going to spot those because they only got good optics. Automatic here taking fire. Judging by the amount of automatics that Crossbrutzel lost here, I'm thinking that this is the last one that he can bring in. Quite some artillery fire on this position, not really doing anything to the tanks, other than panicking them though. And for some reason this tank convoy from Bill Cosby is pulling back. Not sure where they're headed though. Possibly into the cover of this tree line. Not sure. Got an Apache hovering here. It's just waiting to get an order. 58 C8. or CS. Seems that he is trying to do a strike on those tanks anyways. Let's see if he can get away with it. Yeah, he did. There's no response from the AA. There, finally. That was probably a Tunguska. Yeah, it was the main gun of a Tunguska. And that position that was firing here. You can see these bugs are going back to resupply, possibly at the cargoes or maybe even at the FOB. And these guys are being resupplied by the Mi-26 that is coming in, the Urals. So they got enough supplies to keep those missiles firing. Actually, let's have another look. Red 4 has quite a bit of troop build-up here. But it's all tanks. And the amount of Motostrelki that they got over here, this is not a strategic position. It's nice to have, because you can deploy some ATGMs in here, some AA. But otherwise, really, the main objective is this town. So if I would have these Motostrelkis, and it's 50 of them, I would just move them here. Making sure that put up as much of a roadblock as possible to the FKPs, the Delta Force, even the GMC trucks. More reinforcements being brought in, more of those Mosgris, or Mosgri. The Spetsnaz are still there. I don't think that they're gonna go away anytime soon. Probably gonna get a shot at these guys. No, the Rice isn't in range yet. And for now, they're just whittling these infantry units down with the main guns of the Dragonaires and the M113's transport that they use. Now they're getting too close though, because now the Spetsnaz are actively returning fire with their main gun as well, the ASVAL. The amount of Spetsnaz that have gone down here is quite significant. If you see a couple of these things coming at you with Dragonaires or whatever kind of infantry that they're transporting and you have Spetsnaz in here, just pull them back. Because what you want to do is lure those Dragonaires or reservists in here and then engage them with the RPO Rice. That's, as far as I'm concerned, the best way by far of using the Spetsnaz. Seems that Red 4 has finally started to move here with the tanks. And they're getting right into the tank trap that EZE has set up here. Although it's probably not really a tank trap, just a couple of supporting units for the infantry who happen to be there at the right time. And these T-72s just don't stand a chance here. They're getting picked off one by the M1A1 HCs. The M1A1 base is also firing. The Bradley tried to get a couple of shots off, but I don't think that it really managed to hit anything because it constantly lost eyes on through the T-72s going through this block. So that's causing all of those HGMs to miss. Red 4 just decided to obliterate this area. Any infantry that was in here is now gone again. And Crossbrutzel, what the hell? Why is he using these cheap ancient tanks? Centurion Mark 5s. Now the tanks themselves, I gotta say, are not that old, 1985. But you got far superior tanks in the Danish deck or the Scandinavian deck that he's using. So I'm just not sure why he's using these, unless he might be using a full Danish deck. Yeah, that's it. He's using a full Danish deck. So a complete national deck. And that is why he's getting so many of these automatics. And that's why he's also getting a couple of these cheaper tanks in here. These Centurion Mark 5s. Attack here now where the mid is gone. And definitely the middle is gone. There's nothing left in the form of infantry. They have one group, or two groups if you will, of 8 Dragonaires. And the rest is just dead. Let's see how this is going to continue, because it might very well end in a draw by the looks of it. Very, very dangerous and possibly even bad play by the Abrams here. The last thing you want to do, if you have a position like this, is send the Abram right next to it. I'm guessing that EZE put this thing on fast move, and that's why it decided to follow the road here. Possibly right next to the Motostrelki that are still hiding in here. I'm thinking that either the Motostrelki, the Gornos, or possibly a tank that died in the meanwhile got a shot off, because these things are heavily damaged. Doing quite a bit of air superiority runs over here. Not sure why, because there's still a ton of AA that they haven't killed. Again, very, very, very dangerous play by the M1A1. Always push up with your infantry first and then have an M1A1 as support. Because this is just a volunteer target for a VDV-90. Vampires is going to take out those things in one shot. And especially if they're moving through blocks like this, it's very easy for the VDV to get a side shot on them, and that's going to go one-shot them anyway. A couple of Acacias here. Nice, easy targets for the Abrams. Leopard 2A4s are also picking off these Acacias. And now Blue Force finally making some headway here. Well, they have lost a bit of terrain over on the middle. Quite a bit of mortar fire responding to the position of those Acacias, but unfortunately the last one managed to move away just in time. Yeah, they're not going to get that one. Or at least not with artillery. Easy target for an Abrams or a Leopard or a Centurion, I'm not sure which one took it out. Doesn't really matter anyway. Now, it's becoming more important to have tanks over here, because building hopping like this is definitely something that infantry does very well. Tanks don't. An open position like this, an open stretch of terrain, is going to be much more difficult for infantry to cross. You're going to need transports, and the transports that he has for the Delta Force are helicopters. So what he can use here is either repurposed ground transports, if he has any, and I haven't really seen any of those, other than the LAV-25s, and I think that I saw a couple of M2A2s, but they already died. And here's another very dangerous play. He's pushing up with a couple of M1A1 HCs without reconnaissance, because the recon in here is going to have a very, very difficult time spotting whatever's out there. Talking about spotting, this is interesting. Unfortunately, it is gone again. T-80 UK command tank. One of the most expensive tanks in the game, if not the most expensive one. Very, very heavily armored command tank with great weapon systems on them. They are just a prime target, and if you lose an ATGM plane to killing this tank, you're still going to come out positive, because any ATGM plane that you can use is going to be cheaper than the T-80 UK, but you got to make sure you kill it. You can see that the Abrams died here because they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And where the hell is this T-80 UK going? T-80 UK is not a main battle tank. I mean, the platform itself is a main battle tank, but I would never ever use it as such, because it is such a pricey unit. I mean, 200 points is a big investment. I'm not sure how high their income was in this game, but 200 points, whatever kind of game you're playing, whether it's destruction with high income, conquest with high income, it is a huge investment. Couple of, I think, transports. Yeah, infantry just got offloaded into these buildings. And Red 4 has a lot of stuff sitting out here in the open. I'm not sure why they're not using the tree line, because they are all getting spotted. Probably by this Tiger. That would be my bet, because the Bradley sure can't see them through all of these trees. And, oh wow, look at this. Red 4 has actually managed to make it all the way into Echo here. Marines are facing off against VDV-90s. Yeah, they'll win that. Another group of VDV-90s are also going down, but this time to reservists. Well, the reservists are not having a good day here. I'm not sure why he's not putting those into this building surrounding it, because it's going to provide them with a bit more cover. Couple of helicopters engaging the Centurions, and these things are not very heavily armored. 9 on the front, 5 on the side, so they're pretty easy to take down. And that's exactly what these helicopters are doing with the rocket pods. Now something is happening over on the right as well. Wow. Gotta say, I've never seen this, but I think it's a brilliant use of Scorpion 90s. I hadn't even considered it, but these things are amphibious. 35 kph in the water. And he just floated them across as soon as he managed to push out whatever was in here, as so far as there was anything in here. They're also putting up a pretty lackluster smokescreen. I'm not sure what exactly they're doing here because there's all sorts of gaps in the smokescreen. But they did manage to get an opening into Alpha. Now let's hope they can capitalize on it and quickly find that command vehicle. There's not that many positions to hide it. And with it, if you can kill that, you're going to be at a +2 income. See, this is one of the very few positions that I would consider a command tank. Because if you can either neutralize this position, you're going to gain a +2. If you can then capture it by destroying the enemy command, you're going to be getting a +4. Because instead of it being neutral, it's going to be yours and you're going to get the income from it. Unfortunately, Red 4 is responding to this offensive here. Red 4 is being spread more and more thin though, since they only got 3 players versus the 4 on Blue 4. You can see that Blue 4 has most of the map over on the left flank, and they're now steadily working their way up the right flank. But the supply lines for Red 4 are much better than the ones for Blue 4, because Blue 4 has to go all the way over this road. Red 4 is going to come streaming down this road and be there. Now another thing I want to highlight here, never keep your Abrams this close. Because one hit on one Abrams is going to cause a shock effect for the other one. And the other one's also going to be panicked or stunned. And that's exactly what you see happen here. One exploded, the other one got panicked, possibly because it already got engaged by some other targets, and there goes your second Abrams. Always keep these things spread out, one over there and one slightly over there, and you're going to have a better field of fire anyway. More targets popping in and out, and you can see that unfortunately even the Strike Eagle went down, the 15D. MLG Pro surrenders, and that's another Red 4 player. I'm not really sure, because while they might be losing, I mean, they're not going to win it, it's not going to be a draw either. It's not really that big of a loss. They managed to hold the line long enough. By the looks of it though, this initiative is going to fail. They just don't have enough forces. Longbow is now entering the arena as well. Firing off hellfire after hellfire. Not sure what they're firing at though. Scrajats. You can always recognize Scrajats by, let's see if there's anyone left. Yeah, here's one. You can always recognize the Scrajat by the guy who's sitting on top of the vehicle. There's barely any transports who have that. So if you see something like this, you can consider it AA, and there is usually an ATGM or a Spetsnaz or a VDV unit that came out of it. Possibly AA, but I don't see that often. So a little tip, if you can see a guy sitting on top of a transport, manning a dual cannon gun, that is a Scrajat. Let's see, back to Easy E. They are doing a great job here on the left flank, but still they haven't really gotten in here yet. If they would have done a two-pronged assault, that would have been ideal. One heavy initiative here, and one, well, medium to heavy incursion over here. Would have made it so that Red 4 would have had to split their attention completely, and you could just double team or even triple team one of the flanks. Now, Frolix also surrenders and left the game. With 2 minutes on the clock, I just don't understand guys like this. Maybe they just want to get on to the next game or something like that. But you might as well show the sportsmanship of actually staying in the game and finishing off those last 90 seconds. So I'm just not sure why they're doing this. But it means that only Bill Cosby here is left. And I don't think that they're going to get any more conquest points. They're not doing an initiative in hotel yet. Oh, here we go. Marines are slightly scouting here, finding some VDVs. You can see it's a slugging match with mini-me's, NF1s versus the RPK and AK-74s. Let's see if that T-90 is still hanging around here. No, T-90 died, but the T-80 UK is still there. But why? Because you already got a command infantry in here. Why the hell would you get a second command vehicle? Moreover, a command tank in here. Just don't get it. Anyway, they are spotting something here. This is another AA unit, probably a Fasta 4. And over here, Easy E is sniping another unit, probably a command vehicle. Yeah, a CV, marker put down by Iron Ollie. But what I read from the description, the shells from the artillery take too long, and that's very unfortunate because it means that just as they're starting to hit and as they're starting to slightly destroy that CV, the timer runs out. So very, very close match. Let's see how the score is going to be. It is of course a victory. I wouldn't really call it a total victory for Blue 4 because they didn't do that well. They managed to push up quite far, but Red 4 put up a hell of a fight there, so they did a good job. Easy E scored 3,200 points, lost 2,800. I'm thinking that he could have prevented a little bit to quite a lot of loss of life if he had not been that aggressive with the M1A1 HCs. Those things are 150 points apiece if I remember correctly, and with that you could have prevented the loss of those tanks had you not gone in tank first, but gone in recon first to make sure you know what exactly you're getting your tank into. Otherwise, it was definitely a tense game, as Easy E already mentioned in the description. And I hope that you liked watching this. Let's see how Red 4 did. Bill Cosby, last player surviving. I think that he did a good job not surrendering as well. But of course he did lose quite a few forces because he got all the forces, and as you're doing a 4v1 it just gets very, very difficult not to go negative. Frolics got a positive ratio, but for some reason just decided to surrender. Omnicide 8182 got a slightly positive ratio by 30 points, and MLG Pro is just feeding very, very hard. So, I hope you liked watching this Conquest game. If you did, please hit the like button down below. If you had any comments on the game, any things you would recommend Easy E to do differently, just let me know in the comments down below. I don't want to have any flame wars in there. I don't want to see any comments like, oh, you're such a terrible player, go play Tetris or stuff like that. We are more adult than that, guys. So just give them some constructive tips on how to improve the gameplay. And with that, it's the end of the video. Hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time.